Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. This is Ryan Calder broadcasting live on 7.400 MHz, upper sideband. I'm coming to you from the southern edge of Ozark National Forest. My power's gone, phone lines are down, and I haven't heard a single official station hold a signal longer than a few minutes since early morning. If you're hearing this, you're either smart enough to keep a shortwave rig running, or lucky enough to be within range. Either way, I'll stay on as long as I can. It's just after 8 in the morning, Central Standard. I've been up since 3. Wasn't planning to broadcast, but that changed after the second wave of flickering power and a few strange VHF bursts I picked up on the scanner. Now I'm fully operational, but just barely. I'm running off my battery bank, which I recharged with solar while the sun was up yesterday. I've got a backup diesel generator, but I'll only run it when the batteries drop below 10 volts. I need to conserve fuel. I've got enough for 3 days of full broadcast, maybe 5 if I limit my airtime to the most critical updates. What I know right now is messy. What's certain is that Europe's been in rolling blackouts for at least 12 hours. A few hams I spoke to in the early hours, mostly out of Germany and Poland, were reporting major utility failures and natural gas cutoffs. Some of it sounded coordinated, like something was sabotaged, not just a technical glitch. The pipeline chatter started around 2 in the morning. That was the first clue. Meanwhile, something's broken loose here in North America. I've been monitoring several repeater networks across Arkansas, Missouri, and parts of Tennessee. Law enforcement channels lit up for about an hour, then most of them dropped. The Fort Smith Sheriff's Band was last heard at 6:27 a.m., patching in emergency calls about 2 different gas stations being looted. After that, total silence. The scanners just hum now. If you're anywhere near Mountainburg, avoid the station on Highway 71. One of my regulars reported a full-blown altercation there at dawn. Multiple cars pulled in, all trying to pay cash after the card readers went down. An employee locked the doors, and things escalated fast. The last thing I heard from that witness was a smashed storefront and one guy getting dragged out unconscious. Could have been worse. No confirmation of serious injury yet. Fuel theft is already happening. I spoke to a guy named Victor just before I went live. He was trying to siphon diesel from a disabled bus in town when a group of men showed up and made him leave. No law enforcement intervened. This isn't looting by opportunists. This is strategic. People know what's coming. For anyone just tuning in, this isn't a normal emergency broadcast. There is no government station backing this up. No FEMA relay. This is me, a civilian operator, running a full-band shortwave setup out of a repurposed toolshed with hand-built solar feed-in and a backup battery bank. I'm working with 3 known local contacts, one of them being Toby Hale, retired US Air Force, who's been helping me triangulate unusual traffic since 3 a.m. The other 2 are mobile. Names will be kept off air unless they approve. Now, if you're listening and need basic survival info, I'll give the short list right now. Don't wait until the grid collapses entirely. Collect water. If you still have tap water, start filling every tub and sink in your house. Sanitize what you can. Bleach is better than nothing. Use a 1/4 teaspoon of plain bleach per gallon of water if you're desperate. Stir and let sit 30 minutes. If you've got a gravity filter like a Berkey or a Sawyer, set it up now and don't move it. Power is next. Inverters are getting hit with dirty signals from the grid. I had one trip this morning just after the second power flicker. Not a full surge, more like a pulse. If you're using an inverter to keep a fridge or radio running, isolate it. Do not leave it connected to the wall. Run it through a clean battery source. A simple surge strip won't save you if another spike hits the system. Disconnect from the grid. Medical storage is becoming a crisis fast. I've already received 6 GMR's messages from diabetics who lost access to refrigeration. For anyone trying to keep insulin stable, the best advice I can give is this. Create a cold sink using ice packs, if you still have them, or fill a cooler with cold tap water and store it in a shaded room. Rotate bottles if you can. If you have dry ice, insulate it carefully and keep insulin wrapped in newspaper. Don't let it touch frozen packs directly. If you are diabetic or you're caring for one, and you are listening from Arkansas, Missouri, or northern Mississippi, reach out through GMRS channel 36 on digital mode at 1/4 every hour. I'll have someone on that line logging requests and verifying handoff paths for those willing to share emergency meds. Just after 6 o'clock, a .m, I received a static choked relay from a Canadian trucker parked at the Pembina border. His name is Roger. He said the customs post was unmanned when he pulled in, and a Homeland Security vehicle was left idling with the doors open. The fence's perimeter lights are still on, but no one's answering his radio hails. He's trying to keep his reefer load powered, but diesel's running low. He was advised by a passing state deputy, off the record, to turn around and find shelter south. That was 3 hours ago. I haven't heard from him since. We've also got a situation involving a teacher east of here. No call sign, just a plain voice transmission from what sounded like a Baofeng radio. She's holed up with 22 middle schoolers inside a brick school building about 100 miles east of Little Rock. Her voice was calm, steady. She asked for guidance, said parents can't reach them, roads out of town are jammed, and the school's backup generator is out of fuel. They've barricaded the main entrances. I told her to stay in place. Unless she's got proof the area is secure, it's too dangerous to move 24 kids blind. She has enough bottled water for 2 days. Food's limited but rationed. If anyone in that part of the state has access to a functioning vehicle and a fuel supply, contact me through the GMRS emergency node, encrypted channel, rotating frequency. I won't name her school on air for obvious reasons. One good thing happened today. Small, but it matters. I helped coordinate a medicine handoff using a mobile repeater and 2 complete strangers. A couple in Fort Smith was short on insulin. Another family 10 miles out had an extra refrigerated pack. I confirmed the exchange happened at a closed-down diner parking lot just after 7. No violence, no demands, just a clean handoff. That's how we stay human. Right now, I'm hearing fragments of a FEMA region bulletin on high band, but the signal's been chewed to hell by interference. I'll read out what I can verify. Region 6 command staging, incomplete. Convoy reroute advised. Fuel requisition denied. Priority asset deployment postponed. Followed by utility crews requesting diesel access. Power loss in grid subzone 3. Backup grid at limited capacity. I've received a few messages asking about a rumored fuel depot near I-40. Let me be clear, I will not broadcast that location. It's unconfirmed, and if it's real, sharing it would paint a target on every person camped nearby. Until I can verify both the supply and the safety perimeter, I'm keeping it off air. Time now is 10:42 a.m. Central. Phone lines are SOS mode only. I haven't received a single text, ping, or call in 4 hours. Data is locked down. You're listening to one of the only working broadcast chains still running in this region. I'm going to patch in now with Toby. We've been running signal comparison on what sounded like distant percussion hits starting just after dawn. Not sonic booms, not thunder. These were steady, low-frequency repeating. My guess is indirect fire, maybe 2 counties east of here. Toby's rig picked up the same waveform, same time. His triangulation puts it somewhere southeast of Little Rock, at a rough distance of 120 kilometers from my location. He's not sure if it was missile impact or conventional long-range fire, but there was no visible flash, no high-level shockwave. If you're in the Little Rock area and have direct line of sight to the city or surrounding hills, I need confirmation. Did you see light, dust, structural movement? If not, we may be looking at high-altitude detonations or delayed shock from kinetic impact. Toby's gone quiet. Not sure if it's interference or power loss. We were supposed to check signal every 20 minutes. I'll try him again on the next loop. If you're tuning in late, grid failures are spreading across the central states. Fuel's running dry. Military presence is unconfirmed. Civilian law enforcement is fading fast. And I've now received 12 separate reports of controlled burns, curfews, and road barricades being set up by unknown groups. Some of them may be locals. some might not. This is not overreaction. This is not temporary. This is what it looks like when the top breaks off the system and nobody below has orders. I stayed off air for 47 minutes after that last segment. Power here dipped twice during that time. Not a full failure, just enough of a voltage sag to make the inverter buzz. I reset the breakers manually and everything came back clean, but I've rerouted the main panel through my midline filter now. This rig's too important to lose. I've only got one spare transceiver in the Faraday bin, and I don't want to burn it before I know what's coming. I'm still on 7.400 MHz, upper sideband. It's now coming up on 7 p.m. Central Time. I've turned on the long-wave scanner again, but it's just picking up static. No commercial FM, no NOAA. The public service bands are still dark, but the air traffic bands have started lighting up. Most of what I'm hearing is encrypted, pure digital handshake bursts, but there's been a few analog bleed-throughs. One of them, caught just after 1846, was a distress call out of Gulf airspace, southern sector, weak signal, American voice. Said helo detachment from a naval destroyer had been forced to divert, looking for a safe field to set down. Transmission ended before any location was given, no tail number, no frequency match on the follow-up sweep. At nearly the same time, I caught a transmission fragment on civilian airband that might be linked. A controller out of Shreveport or possibly Fort Polk was asking an inbound flight to confirm its origin and intentions. Voice was clipped, calm, but urgent. The signal cut out mid-sentence, and I've heard nothing since. Those aren't isolated incidents. They're stacking now. There's also been a change in the sound of the air itself. The last 20 minutes, I've had a persistent low-frequency pressure in the trees near the ridge. It's not wind. It's something else. It comes and goes like a pulse. I went outside to confirm it wasn't local interference. No overhead traffic at that moment. No thunder. Nothing in the valley below, but when I looked south, I saw a red haze just above the tree line. At first, I thought it was sunset distortion. Then I noticed it wasn't fading with the light. It was fixed, low, wide, and stable. That's when the first family called in. They were in a grey Toyota, headed north from Conway. The father said they'd passed a backed-up line of cars going nowhere near the overpass outside Dardanelle. When they tried to detour, they came across a man-made roadblock. 2 trucks angled across the intersection, with the hoods popped open and oil dumped across the pavement. No police in sight. One of the trucks was burning, but the fire was low, more smoke than flame. They didn't know if it was set up to stop traffic or hide something behind it. I guided them through county backroads using the last clean topographic map I've got pinned to the wall. There are 3 safe routes north from that position if you avoid the logging trails. 2 were already compromised by downed trees and debris. The third, a narrow gravel path that skirts the base of the hill range, was open but risky. I told them if they took it, they needed to go slow and keep headlights off once they cleared the first 2 miles. They made it. I just heard from them again 10 minutes ago. They're parked at a small church north of Coal Hill, doors locked, signal weak, but voice is clear. If you're moving north in that region, be careful of the southern sky. Right before that family reached the safe zone, I saw what looked like a low-altitude fireball moving east to west across the southern horizon. Not a meteor. The light was orange, not white, and it left a trail. No sound immediately, but a delayed pressure shock about 20 seconds after it passed out of view. I logged wind speed at 3 knots out of the southeast at the time. That means fallout, if any, would carry northwest. Do not drive south of Clarksville until I can get visual confirmation of the impact zone. I'm still not calling it a strike, but that's 2 separate visual anomalies in the past 2 hours. Meanwhile, the background noise on the 40-meter band has changed. I'm getting what sounds like interleaved digital overlays, heavy signal wash, could be jamming, could be data relay. Either way, I had to rehang my dipole 10 feet lower to regain NVIS effectiveness. I dropped it from 25 feet to just under 15 and sloped the angle for better regional bounce. It's holding for now, but if propagation conditions worsen, I'll need to fall back to the backup NFED. Now let's address the question I've been asked 6 different times in the last 90 minutes. Are strategic sites being targeted? I don't know, and I won't pretend to. Anyone claiming to know for sure where the first strikes are hitting is either guessing or trying to provoke a reaction. What I can confirm is that most cell towers between Little Rock and the Oklahoma border are down. That's not normal outage behavior. It's clustered failure. That could be power grid related, or it could be the result of direct interference. But I won't speculate on nuclear, hypersonic, or chemical until I have hard evidence. If you live near a military site, a major airport, or a power station, I advise keeping your radios on, but your heads down. Collect water. Stay away from tall glass structures. Secure entry points. Keep vehicle gas tanks as full as possible. Now a brief update on national movement. I just received a delayed relay from a contact west of Dallas. He says US forces have begun staged redeployments along the Gulf and Pacific coasts. Nothing confirmed in writing, but he saw a multi-vehicle military convoy heading east on State Route 82. All markings were taped over. Drivers wore standard uniforms. No visible patches. No insignias. One of the trailers was long enough to hold a communications array or a short-range missile platform. That movement tracks with something I heard on high band earlier this evening, a possible mine strike in the South China Sea. One report said it was a drone-deployed contact mine, not a missile, not an aircraft. Whatever it was, it hit the hull of a US destroyer and crippled forward propulsion. No casualty numbers, no formal statement. But within 30 minutes of that signal going out, several major air corridors over the Pacific were closed without warning. Airspace over Arkansas remains uncontrolled but contested. I've logged 6 unidentified flight paths over the southern range since 3 p.m., all subsonic, all low, no contrails. One was visibly banking westward, possibly following the river. No IFF squawk on any of them. There's a new ping on my local net, a weak burst on digital. It's from Asta. First contact from that call sign since yesterday. Message reads, expect grid instability, protect front end, Faraday now. That's it. No follow-up, no context. Just that line. I don't know who Asta is. I've received 5 messages in the last 2 months with that call sign attached. All were short, all were accurate. One warned me of a cyber attack before local banks froze withdrawals. Another flagged a power line overload 2 hours before my UPS fried. Whoever this is, they're plugged in. I just placed the secondary transceiver into the shielded container. The handhelds are wrapped and boxed. I'm going to leave this main unit on the line another 10 minutes, then switch over to the alternate. As I was reaching for the backup radio, a pulse hit, short, loud, static slammed through the headphones. S-meter redlined for 2 seconds. It felt like a spike straight through the front end of the rig. My inverter whined. Monitors shut off. Battery alarm chirped once and went silent. The air in the shack buzzed with residual charge. It didn't come from inside. That was external. A high voltage event, probably atmospheric or directed pulse. Not lightning. No sound before it. No flash. Just pressure, then bleed, like standing too close to an arc welder. I pulled the power leads and cut the generator. Everything dropped to dead quiet except the rain hitting the roof panels. I waited. 10 minutes. No further strike. No smoke. No fried plastic. After a manual inspection, I brought the battery bank back online and ran a test load through the small LED panel. Clean signal. No flicker. One of the radio units is toast. My fallback CB rig won't power on. I've wrapped the spares and HTs in foil and shoved them into a grounded ammo can, placed inside a steel lockbox padded with rubber mat. It's a crude Faraday setup, but better than nothing. At 7:15 a.m., I brought the main transceiver back up on reduced wattage. I'm keeping output to just under 20 watts, signal stable but range limited. If you're picking me up, I'm still on 7.400 MHz, upper sideband. This is Calder, transmitting from northwest Arkansas. The entire region is dark. Grid failure has gone total. There's no residual line voltage, no automatic transfer systems clicking on. All you'll hear now are the hums and whines of backup systems, if anyone had the foresight to install them. I've confirmed through 3 relays that power loss extends from the Mississippi River west through Tulsa and up into Kansas City. Fuel stations are completely dry from Clarksville to Fayetteville. I had a long-range VHF contact with a firehouse captain in Russellville. His generator was running, but he said they're out of oil. He begged for help over a simplex channel at 4 this morning. No one's responded. He's rationing runtime to 4 hours per day, using it strictly to power the dispatch radio and keep their insulin fridge cold. If there's anyone with extra oil, standard 1030 or 1540, synthetic or not, and the ability to reach the Russellville City Firehouse safely, contact me by top of the hour. I'll coordinate safe routing. The firehouse isn't defending itself. They've used all their barricade materials for shelter support and they're down to a skeleton crew. I've had no military confirmation in this zone, no organized evac routes, no overflights since last night's sonic contact. But I've seen flickers in the valley, not lightning, not combustion. It's the glow of plastic and cable fires. Orange-red, no flicker. Melted utility hardware most likely. The big news today is financial, or what's left of finance. Overnight, the final bank processing networks that were still up on hardline went down. I got that confirmed through a retired IT administrator outside St. Louis, who was monitoring local routing tables. He says the entire ACH system is unresponsive. Even the failover protocols to backup clearinghouses were cut. He called it a surgical takedown, said it wasn't just brute force denial of service, this was targeted disruption. Insurers have begun freezing payouts. If you've got flood damage, storm loss, or vehicle claims in process, don't expect anything to move. I heard from 2 families who were mid-payout for medical coverage and got notifications yesterday afternoon that active conflict conditions had suspended all further processing. Those were automated replies. Nobody's answering phones. If you're trying to access stored cash, you're out of luck. I had a caller this morning, an older man outside Greenwood, whose wife is insulin dependent and already fading. He used to be a diesel mechanic. Said he had a running generator and a small solar setup. No spare insulin though. They'd been sharing doses. I connected him to a family in Charleston whose father was recently admitted to hospice and had 3 sealed vials left over. Neither party had a way to travel safely. One had a vehicle with a cracked oil pan. The other had fuel but no vehicle. I coordinated a 3-way chain using GMR's handhelds and 2 runners on mountain bikes. It took 4 hours. The nurse who delivered the medication was retired Army, carried a laminated list of dosages and expired hospital credentials. She gave clear instructions, waited for vitals, then left without asking for anything. That's how you stay decent in all this. You do what needs doing, and you don't ask for payment. Now, there's been some chatter I want to shut down immediately. 3 people today have asked me to broadcast calls for setting up armed checkpoints. That's not what this frequency is for. If you want to protect your street, do it on your own time, with your own plan. I will not facilitate militia groups. I will not help you recruit. This is a medical and survival net only. You want to spread panic or create local power grabs, do it somewhere else. Around midday, I noticed my generator's idle was pulsing. I shut it down and stripped the carburetor. It was fouled with gummy residue, probably old ethanol breakdown. I keep spare jets, so I replaced the needle valve and flushed the bowl with mineral spirits. Reassembled, primed, pulled, back to stable idle. For anyone running small gas engines right now, be aware, if your fuel sat too long with ethanol mix, it's going to gum up fast. Flush it if you can. If not, run on fresh fuel and hope for the best. Keep your intakes clean and your load balanced. I just heard something odd. During my last VHF sweep, I picked up heavy skip from the east. The signal was distorted, but certain key phrases came through. One repeated line, code black initiated, bunker sealed. That came from a military channel. The voice was clipped and read fast. If this was a drill, it would have followed with a location or confirmation code. It didn't. It ended on the phrase, no further civilian entry permitted. I don't know what that means for the rest of us. but I know what it means for those trying to get into those places. Don't bother. If you weren't on a list weeks ago, the doors aren't opening. It's now after 9 p.m. I've got a storm cell moving in from the west. Low pressure, scattered rain. That'll mess with signal bounce for the next hour or two, so if I fade out, give it time. I'll stay on as long as the rig holds. Right now my batteries are at 8.6 volts and draining slow. I'm time slicing my transmission blocks. 10 minutes on, 20 off. Enough to keep updates flowing without killing the system. Earlier today, I saw a man walking the old county road behind my ridge. He was pushing a cart, homemade, probably a modified wheelbarrow frame. I watched him through the spotting scope for several minutes. He didn't wave, he didn't stop. He passed through slow, cautious, head on a swivel. No sign of aggression. Looked like he was just trying to get somewhere. I didn't make contact. Sometimes it's better that way. I haven't heard from Toby in 12 hours. We had scheduled check-ins at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., and again at noon. He missed all three. His last burst transmission was a short encrypted packet that cut off mid-sequence. There was no identifier, no message body. I've tried every known frequency we shared. Nothing's bounced back. If you're out there, Toby, respond on our usual slot. Doesn't matter the mode. Just key up and let me know you're okay. If you're compromised or mobile, send a short data burst with your general heading. I'll triangulate manually if I have to. It's day 3. No grid, no mobile network, no civil broadcast presence anywhere within range. I've now scanned from 4.2 up through 14 megahertz 3 times in the last hour. The usual chatter is dead. NOAA stations are silent. Only a few civilian operators still checking in on 40 meter. A couple from Ohio, a nurse in southern Missouri, one trucker somewhere west of Texarkana running solar off an RV battery, checking for road access. The static is heavier today, propagation's inconsistent, either solar interference or upper atmospheric distortion from detonation activity east of here. I've had to drop my power output and switch to narrower filters just to keep this frequency stable. Signal might be fuzzy on the edges, but I'm holding. This is Calder. 7.400 megahertz, upper sideband. I'm still live, and I'm building something new. We're calling it the Arkansas Civilian Relay Net. ArcNet, if you want a name that fits in the logbook. No official backing, no funding, just a grid of amateur operators using analog tools to keep evacuees alive. The idea came last night after I got swamped by back-to-back calls asking the same things. Where can I find food? Where can I sleep? Where are the roads clear? The answer was always changing, and I was the only one fielding the calls. That doesn't scale. So we've split the relay cycle into 4 categories. Each one gets a slot every hour, on the hour. First quarter hour is medical. Second quarter is food and water. Third quarter is fuel and generator coordination. Fourth is shelter and evacuation routes. The cycle resets hourly. If you're a relay node, pick one category and own it. If you're a mobile unit, listen to all 4. The rules are simple, short, clear, verified reports only. No speculation, no fear baiting. Now to local developments. The county fairgrounds southeast of town has become an informal camp. It started as a parking lot rendezvous. 2 families, 3 cars. Word got around fast. By sunrise, there were at least 30 vehicles, some tents, several propane stoves, and a working PA system rigged up on a hay truck. It's the closest thing we have to an organized holding area. I haven't been there in person, but I've got someone on site relaying status updates every 2 hours. His name's Kevin, former firefighter. Says he's not in charge, but folks are looking at him like he is. Supplies are running low. Water is being collected from a nearby irrigation canal, but no one's filtering it. If you're listening from that camp, boil or filter everything. That runoff carries pesticides, animal waste, and stagnant algae. I'll be trying to get a portable filter delivery out there by nightfall, assuming I can reach the couple from Ork, who mentioned owning 2 unused Sawyer kits. There was a small fight this morning over gas siphoning. 2 men argued over a jeep parked behind the fairgrounds restrooms. No injuries, but it nearly escalated. Kevin diffused it. You can't let stuff like that grow legs. Next time, someone won't stop when it's just words. This morning, I received a call from a rural clinic just outside Ozark. The nurse gave only her first name, Maria. She's running the facility on a borrowed generator with one working IV pump and a box of expired saline. She said they've got 7 people sheltering there, not all patients. 1 diabetic, 1 trauma case from a car wreck near the bridge, a baby with respiratory issues. They're burning through their supplies fast. Maria's request was specific. She needed saline, antibiotics, and bandages. I checked my short list of possible donor locations. There are 3 abandoned dentist offices within 20 miles of her, all unguarded, confirmed vacant. I knew 2 operators from Clarksville who were still mobile. I reached both on GMRS and gave them the locations. They were reluctant at first, worried about ambushes or booby traps. I didn't pressure them, I just gave them the details. 10 minutes later they were rolling out. I just got word. Both offices had what she needed. They're en route now, ETA under 2 hours if the roads hold. For others listening, if you have access to expired or surplus medical goods, don't hoard them. Contact me on this frequency or the GMRS emergency relay. I'll route it where it's needed. You may never meet the people you help, but they'll stay alive because of you. That's enough. Just after midday, I intercepted something on a military band. No encryption. It wasn't meant for civilian ears, but it wasn't hidden either. A flat, cold voice, likely automated, read out a sequence I won't repeat. But one part of the message stuck. Sterilization of Corridor Delta will commence at 3 p.m. local time. I ran a map overlay. Corridor Delta, based on triangulation, is most likely the eastbound stretch of Interstate 40 between Clarksville and Atkins. That's a known choke point. Narrow road, limited exits, no bypasses. Now I had a decision to make. That corridor currently has at least 80 vehicles stalled or parked based on multiple eyewitnesses. Some of those people are sleeping in their cars. Others are stuck without fuel or too scared to move. I wasn't sure what sterilization meant in this context. Could be a clearing operation, could be something worse. I sat on that information for 23 minutes, then I made the call. At 13:30 I went live on GMRS channel 36 and shortwave with a general warning. Possible air operation over the I-40 eastbound corridor between 3 o'clock and 4 p.m. I gave suggested evacuation routes, side roads, and advised anyone in that area to break up into smaller groups and leave the shoulder of the highway immediately. I didn't cause a panic. I read slow, gave facts, and paused often. I made it clear this wasn't a confirmed strike, but a possible sweep. Within the hour, I received 8 confirmed movements from that corridor. 2 of those parties made it to the fairgrounds. 1 diverted west. The others are mobile and updating status by voice relay. If this warning saved lives, good. If it caused unnecessary fear, I'll own that. But I won't sit on something that dangerous just because it came wrapped in formal phrasing. Around 4 p.m., jamming started. Not strong, but present. The 40-meter band filled with faint overlapping tones. Not quite Morse, not quite digital. Just enough noise to drop signal clarity. I switched to 20-meter for 15 minutes, but lost my NVIS range. The skip was carrying me too far north. I dropped back to 40 and narrowed my filter band. Cleaned up enough to stay functional. I'm down to 12 watts now to reduce signal profile. The antenna's holding. No visual drones spotted today. Until 10 minutes ago. Just as I was logging the last of the relay handoffs, I heard a buzzing. Low, fast. I stepped outside the shack and looked southeast. 3 drones, medium-sized quadcopters, crossed the tree line and hovered briefly over the county line road. They didn't cross my property, but they were watching something. Each had blinking red strobe markers. Not hobby drones. These were heavier, commercial class or better. No police identifiers. No national markings. They hovered 30 seconds. Then all 3 shot east and vanished. That was enough to make me pull the cokes and go dark for 5 minutes. I ran system checks, reset my bandpass filter, and watched the sky. No follow-up. I can't say if they were scouting or targeting, but I'm tightening my signal windows from now on. 10 minutes per hour, with randomized start times. That's the new standard. It's day 4, no grid, no water pressure, no cell service. Diesel is nearly impossible to find unless you already had it stored. I'm still holding about 22 gallons in rotation, plus a sealed can I'm saving for when I have to relocate. I've switched over to short-cycle radio bursts. My full transmissions now run just under 9 minutes, twice per hour, and I only stay on longer if a life-threatening call comes in. Last night, something changed around here. Not the kind of thing that makes a headline. Not the kind of event anyone outside this valley would log. But locally, it shifted the tone. Around 2 in the morning, someone spray-painted a crude sign on the road leading up the ridge. Big black letters on particle board. Ridge secured. Stop or turn back. No one signed it, but I know who did it. A group of men from the other side of the mountain, not organized, not in uniform, but moving like they've played soldier long enough to know how to intimidate people who haven't. I saw them down the slope yesterday, combing the highway shoulder with flashlights. One of them had a scoped rifle slung across his back and a modified CB antenna sticking out of his pack. They're calling themselves a local security team, but what they really mean is they've claimed territory. They haven't approached me directly, not yet, but their path is tightening. Last night I picked up chatter on the GMRS band. Low band transmissions with modified PL tones, likely meant to keep out random listeners. I caught enough to confirm they were talking about my hill. They know someone's broadcasting. They haven't triangulated it yet, but I've started jumping frequencies between transmissions. My fallback is 20 meter, 14.215 megahertz, but I'm staying on 40 as long as I can maintain stealth. Around midnight, I heard gunfire echo from the valley floor. Single bursts at first, then automatic. Probably converted civilian platforms. Not military, not standard issue, but enough to sound like control fire. I dropped to whisper power immediately and pulled the antenna lead. I let the station sit cold for nearly an hour. The firefight didn't move closer, but the burn plume started around 3 a.m. It was visible from here. Wide, high, thick black smoke drifting east toward town. It was the truck stop. Confirmed by Kevin at the fairgrounds shortly after. He had eyes on it from a bridge west of the site. Said multiple vehicles were torched. Some had been hot-wired and driven into the storefront. Nobody was inside when it started. The fire spread to the attached convenience building. Explosions followed, likely propane tanks or generator units going up. That location had been one of the last known fuel depots with partial reserves. I'd warned people about it, told them not to rely on it, not to crowd it. Somebody ignored that. Now it's gone. This morning, I finally made contact with a long-haul convoy out of eastern Oklahoma that had been sitting quiet until they hit the Arkansas border. Their lead operator goes by the call sign Stacker. He's former logistics, private side, and his team is hauling what's left of a mixed supply contract that was supposed to be delivered before the outage. He's sitting on 2 pallets of bottled saline, canned food, and limited first aid kits. Says he's willing to trade for fuel or actionable road intel. We talked in short bursts through digital relay, used checksum packets to minimize exposure. He's holding his convoy about 10 miles out from a known ambush site. Not military, just opportunists working the bypass road. He said if I can get him 3 clean corridor routes with up-to-date movement logs, he'll make a delivery to the fairgrounds and 2 other civilian clusters. That's a good trade, but I've only got confirmed road status on 2 segments. I'll need visual confirmation for the 3rd, and I don't have a drone. If anyone listening is mobile and in position to scout the junction at Route 23 and Highway 164, I need a direct confirmation of traffic obstructions, hostile presence, or infrastructure damage. No guesses, no hearsay. We need a real set of eyes on it. Time window is 4 hours. After that, Stacker's rolling west again. Meanwhile, oil is now the hinge point. This morning, a refinery fire was confirmed in the Gulf Corridor. No official source, but I heard it repeated by 3 maritime operators out of Florida, all of them redirecting shipping to deeper water to avoid potential fallout. Crude futures aren't trading anymore, not officially, but black market exchange rates are spiking fast. Diesel is now being bartered in quantities of quarts and ounces, not gallons. Insurance clauses are kicking in globally. LNG transport is stalling, not because the ships aren't available, but because insurers are pulling coverage for passage through contested waters. Without insurance, no carrier can legally deliver to port without full liability. That means the flow of refined fuels into the eastern seaboard has stopped. I've heard nothing from the Colonial Line or the Southern Feed. Either they're being held, redirected, or offline. An hour ago, a statement came through a filtered feed. The Eurasian Strategic Pact, the coalition I mentioned 2 days back, just issued a joint declaration. Their wording was vague but firm. They confirmed mutual response frameworks to Western logistical intervention. In simple terms, that means if any nation tries to reopen sea corridors, they'll view it as hostile. No room for interpretation. We're entering the stage now where the fuel war becomes the real war. It's not about bombs or airspace. It's about whether engines can run. If the convoys stop, the people stop eating. It's that simple. On high band, I caught a weak HF signal from a Filipino mariner. His voice was low, tired, almost whispering. Said his fishing boat was chased off by low-flying drones operating without ID lights. They'd been working the western edge of disputed waters and weren't even near the red lines. He said the drones came in fast, buzzed their nets and left. No weapons deployed, but the message was clear. That stretch of ocean is no longer safe for civilians. Another transmission, this one on mid-band maritime, was a mayday. A tanker out of the Gulf, name was lost in noise, had a shaft issue and was adrift. No power, no escort. Last ping placed them west of the Florida Panhandle, dead in the water. I haven't heard an update. Nobody's coming to tow them. Locally, the pressure is growing. The so-called Ridge team I mentioned earlier now has an AM radio loop playing on Channel 11, repeating a recorded voice every 30 minutes, stating that residents within Zone 4 are under curfew from dusk to dawn. No official seal, no agency listed. I'm not reading it over this channel, and I'm not legitimizing it. I had 2 refugees call in asking if the order was real. I told them the truth. There is no government curfew. There is no authority behind that recording. Just people with guns and no oversight. This frequency remains neutral. I will not take sides. I will not broadcast faction messages. I serve evacuees, not warlords. Now for the mechanical update. Late this afternoon, I noticed the generator was leaking. Small pool under the skid frame. On inspection, I found the rubber fuel line had split near the clamp. Spall from nearby gunfire last night must have sent a fragment into the housing. I cut the line, fitted a replacement with clear hose, and locked it down with a spare stainless clamp. It's holding, but I'll need to bleed the line every 12 hours to prevent vapor lock. I'm logging fuel burn by hand now. Roughly 1.8 gallons per day at current draw. That gives me 11 days max if I don't reduce load. This is Calder, still operating on 7.400 MHz. The shack is running quiet. I'm using passive cooling only. No fans, no unnecessary draw. Just the transceiver, a notepad, and the solar feed shifting through its voltage climb. Air temp today stayed in the low 70s. Winds light, clear skies for once. That helps. Now, the bigger picture. Official announcements have changed tone. The language is more clipped, less about restoring order and more about managing outcomes. Late last night, I intercepted a State Emergency Operations Center bulletin, not meant for public channels. The phrase, strategic withdrawal zones, was used 3 times. The message stated that areas unable to maintain municipal coordination or food security would no longer receive state-level support. Residents were advised to self-organize outside of designated belts. No guidance on what those belts are or how to identify them. It sounds like they're drawing down services where resistance is too costly. If you're in one of those zones, don't wait for trucks that aren't coming. Start planning your own networks now. Water, calories, medical, that's all that matters. A separate broadcast came through the same net, this one from the Office of Emergency Broadcasting. They've reduced transmission hours to preserve system redundancy. National traffic will now only be aired during 3 windows per day, 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. Eastern. If you miss those, you miss everything. That's the situation now. Internationally, things are closing fast. Japan has suspended all commercial flights indefinitely. That includes evacuation charters and international aid. Their ports remain open for now, but offloading has slowed due to a combination of staffing shortages and radiation alerts from Pacific weather patterns. South Korea is under internal lockdown, no civilian movement between provinces. Their agriculture ministry released a blunt report this morning. Rice harvests were already projected to come in low due to fertilizer constraints. Now, with the energy rationing, drying and transport are nearly impossible. In Europe, rail access has fractured. The Swiss-German corridor is bottlenecked. France has declared a complete state of interior emergency. Public radio is still broadcasting, but it's automated. From what I'm hearing, meat processing has stopped in most of the continent. Grain elevators in Hungary and Slovakia are under guard. Not military, private. That tells you who controls the food now. Back home, the Midwest rail lines are the new choke point. Every food shipment that isn't local or coastal has to go through there. A derailment north of Des Moines yesterday reportedly took out 2 junctions used for cross-regional transfers. I haven't been able to confirm which yards were affected, but it's enough that at least 3 regional processors are already offline. One meat facility in Kansas City is cold, and the last rail-fed plant in Springfield reported power instability and armed loiterers on the perimeter. If that facility goes down, protein supply to 3 states gets cut in half. Locally, our last substation in the county went dark just after sunset. It wasn't a slow failure. It was sudden, audible from here. There was a hard click, then a low-frequency hum, followed by the flickering of sky glow as the lights below blinked out one by one. That substation covered the town's remaining lift stations, a retirement center, and 2 small cell towers. With that offline, we are now completely disconnected from the regional grid. We also lost the sheriff. It wasn't violence, it was a rollover. His vehicle clipped an improvised roadblock while trying to reach the bypass south of town. Gravel pile collapsed under the wheels. The patrol unit flipped and caught fire. There was no recovery. I verified the report with one of the EMTs still operating on Channel 6 out of the high school shelter. She said he was the last uniformed responder still trying to move independently between zones. We now have no central law enforcement in the entire northern half of the county. What remains are isolated efforts, a few firemen, volunteers, and civilians with radios. The vacuum is growing. To keep people fed, I've started coordinating localized swaps. This morning, I arranged a food trade between a rural church pantry and a backwoods clinic run by a retired veterinarian who still had a functioning deep freezer. The church had canned goods and rice, but no meds. The vet had leftover animal-grade antibiotics. Not ideal, but in crisis, it's better than nothing. We routed a bicycle runner through an old forestry road to avoid the ridge checkpoint. It worked. Transfer complete. I'll keep doing this for as long as the net holds. If you're in range and have something, food, fuel, antibiotics, insulin, blankets, log it, and ping this channel during designated barter windows. Top of the hour, every 2 hours. Not before. I will not manage chaos. This isn't Craigslist. Early this afternoon, a teenage boy arrived on foot from the west, dragging one leg and carrying a cracked messenger bag. I saw him from the scope before he got close. Unarmed, clothes torn. I let him approach the edge of the property and waited until he sat down. Only then did I go out and check him. His name is Denny, 16. Says his family tried to make it out of Fort Smith on the second day, but their vehicle was stripped while they were sleeping. They split up. He hasn't seen his brother in 2 days. He's got a deep gash in his calf. Dirty, not infected, but close. I cleaned it the best I could. hydrogen peroxide, iodine, gauze. I keep my medical kit sealed in a rubber tote beneath the desk. I don't use it unless I have to. I used it today. He's resting now inside the shack. I gave him half a can of peaches and a cot. I'll keep him here until he can walk clean, or until someone comes looking for him. If he has family out there, contact me through the net. No names needed. Just the code phrase he gave me. Blacktop Rabbit. If you use that phrase, I'll know you're legit. While dressing the wound, I had to step away 3 times to respond to incoming calls. One was from Maria at the rural clinic. She's running low on IV tubing and saline again. I had an unconfirmed report about a regional warehouse near the old shipping yard, possibly still holding pre-staged hospital gear. But it's been looted before, and last time someone tried entering that location, they were chased out by armed men. I sat for nearly an hour debating whether to read that location on air. Maria needs the supplies, but if I read the address and someone walks into a trap, that's on me. I waited. Then Maria got back to me with something better. She confirmed visual. A woman in her group had worked at that facility. Said the main doors were sealed before the power went out. No markings since. If it's been looted, it wasn't through the main entrance. I gave the coordinates to one runner only. No wide broadcast. He left at dusk with a flashlight wrapped in red film and a sidearm in his waistband. I'll update when I hear back. Now for a technical update. My batteries are losing capacity. The charge won't hold past dawn. I suspected it after the last cloudy stretch, but now it's confirmed. Voltage drops below 11 volts before I finish my second broadcast cycle. I had to rewire the solar panel mounts to a swivel joint built from old conduit pipe and PVC brackets. They rotate now, which gives me better tilt angle for late-day sun. I also moved the battery bank inside the shack to protect it from temperature swings. I'm operating on timed output now, staggered intervals every 80 minutes. It's not ideal, but it keeps the voltage up and the load balanced. Last piece for tonight. Asta is back. Their signal came through at 1:10 a.m. Short burst. High-gain encrypted packet. Decrypted with the old key we used last week. Message was plain text. Convoy en route from Grid 1 Echo 2. Diplomatic class. Needs safe lane and civilian radio escort. Guide frequency required to bypass rogue checkpoints. Coordinates follow. The string of GPS coordinates point to a 3-vehicle movement crossing into Arkansas from the northeast. If it's real, and I have no reason to think it isn't, that convoy is carrying something more valuable than medicine, probably a state official, maybe international liaison. Either way, I'm the only working operator in this region with stable analog guidance. This is Calder, transmitting live on 7.400 MHz, upper sideband. Local time is just past 2 p.m. I've updated the frequency band split. This channel is now designated for air corridor navigation and civilian medical relay. All barter and supply contacts have been redirected to the GMRS net, channel 29 digital, repeating every 30 minutes. I'm hearing high-altitude movement again. It started less than an hour ago. Sonic disturbances. Not isolated. These aren't just distant rumbles. They're patterned. Ejector trails are visible overhead. 2 contrails. One climbing, one breaking off. It looks like active engagement. There's no thunderhead to blame this time. Clear sky, low humidity. The tracks in the air don't drift. They curve. That's controlled maneuvering. The first pass shook the shack. I felt it in the rafters. The door shifted slightly in its frame, and I lost 2 LED strips to the vibration. After that, the air went quiet for a while. Not completely, just hollow, like it was waiting. Then the next wave passed. 3 sharp pulses, staggered about 30 seconds apart. The S-meter spiked each time. Full broadband sweep interference, followed by rapid recovery. That's either electronic countermeasures or a bleed over from high-burn aviation platforms. Could be manned, could be autonomous. As I was logging those passes, a call came in from a contact I haven't heard in almost a week. W8NTL, Eastern Tennessee. She's using the handle Echo 4 and says she's relaying for a downed pilot. No names, no tail number, just an IFF ping broadcast picked up on civilian SDR gear. Emergency transponder is active, but faint. Location pinged northeast of my position, inside a stretch of farmland that's been without road access since the storm 2 nights ago. The signal is intermittent. I asked for confirmation. 2 more hams responded, one out of southern Missouri, another near Texarkana. We ran a crude time difference of arrival calculation by logging signal timestamps across the same propagation bounce. It took 20 minutes, but we got a triangulated zone roughly 7 miles square, centered near the edge of Pope County. I'm relaying that now to a call sign known as Angel 2. Female voice, military discipline, rotor wing asset. Sounds like National Guard or Army Air, but I didn't ask. She picked up my call on emergency band after I broadcast the downed ping. Her response was fast, sharp, clipped, clearly airborne and mid-mission. Said she was in position to divert but only had 15 minutes of loiter time. I'm walking her in, using landmarks. That area's got no current geodata updates, so I'm relying on pre-war topography and analog map overlays. Closest marker is a broken silo cluster off Route 55. I've guided her to visual and instructed her to flare if she spots movement. If it's the pilot, she'll try to land. If it's hostile or ambiguous, she'll hover and wait for smoke or mirror signal. While I coordinated that, jamming increased. Twice, I had to switch bands, drop to 6.8, and then back to primary after flushing a rolling frequency block that swept across the 7.1 range. Whoever's trying to suppress these signals knows what they're doing, but they're not pinpointing fast enough. I'm cycling antennas every 30 minutes. Dipole for wide net, then the short whip with choke filter to drop my visibility. 15 minutes later, I heard her call back. Package recovered. That was it. I didn't press. She thanked me, said, "We'll try to pay it forward." I've locked that call in my book. Time, date, location. If she makes it through, someone else out there knows we helped her. Just as I logged that, I got a narrow beam relay from a maritime frequency. Brief burst, but it matched the emergency tones used by naval units. The audio was scrambled, but I caught 3 clear pulses, an alarm sequence typically used for flight deck evacuation, followed by nothing. That was out of the Gulf. My guess is a destroyer took a hit or lost propulsion. A few minutes later, a high-altitude surveillance platform out of the Great Plains region redirected traffic from that stack. No call signs were used, just control instructions, pushing flights west into a lower density band. The voice was synthetic, probably AI-routed control. That's the first time I've heard automated vectoring since the blackout. Back in Arkansas, the pressure is mounting again. The fake security checkpoint near the ridge has grown. I now count at least 4 vehicles with spotters and a crude barrier made from overturned fencing and debris. They're not military, but they've taken control of the only paved road up this side of the slope. Earlier today, a caravan of refugees tried to pass through. I heard the exchange over GMRs. The leader was calm, asked permission to pass. The response was loud, aggressive, and ended with a warning shot. The caravan turned around. No shots fired at them directly, but the message was clear. That stretch of road is closed to civilians. Maria at the clinic called shortly after. Said people are talking about raiding her building. Not directly, not yet, but she's heard whispers through the windows. Supplies attract attention. She asked if I could broadcast a curfew warning to make the area seem more dangerous than it is. Fake an official order, just to scare off looters. I thought about it. I really did. It would have been easy. Just a clean voice, clear wording, a made-up seal. But I didn't. Instead, I contacted 3 locals I trust, former volunteers, quiet people. I asked if they'd be willing to sit watch outside the clinic for a few nights, just visible enough to deter. One agreed without hesitation. The second needed some food in exchange, which I can provide. The third didn't respond. That's good enough. I'll rotate the watch schedule and keep it low profile. People talk. A calm presence matters more than a fake one. Technically, I'm pushing this rig close to its thermal limit. The finals are running hot. I've added a small fan mounted above the chassis, tied to a separate power feed to keep draw isolated. I've also reduced my duty cycle, less than 60% of the hour now. and switched to a narrower sideband to maintain voice clarity without wasting power. It's working, but I can't keep this up long term. My battery reserve is down another 5%. Cloud cover is coming in from the west. I've adjusted the solar angle again, but without direct sun tomorrow, I'll have to limit transmission blocks to 15 minutes, 4 times per day. That's what it'll take to keep this gear alive through the weekend. Now the bigger problem. A broadcast went out just after 7 p.m. I caught it on a state relay band normally reserved for weather alerts. It wasn't weather this time. The phrase was corridor sterilization. Same wording as before. This time, the region listed includes this entire county. Operation window starts 6 hours from now. No further information was given. That left me with 2 choices: stay and risk a targeted sterilization pass, or move the station to another site before the window opened. I didn't have a shelter deep enough to ride out an airburst, and even if this wasn't a strike in the traditional sense, it would involve signals, heat, or radiation that the gear couldn't survive. Neither could I. I already had fallback locations charted, but I hadn't tested any of them under real pressure. Tonight was going to change that. I ran the disconnect checklist from memory. Power down the rig. Switch the solar inverter to bypass. Coil the coax. Pull the dipole lines from the trees and stow them flat. Each minute ticking past made me feel more exposed. The air was heavy still. Nothing overhead, no lights, but the silence itself felt artificial, like a wide aperture had opened somewhere above, and something was watching. I woke the teenager, Owen, by tapping his shoulder. He'd fallen asleep on the floor wrapped in a fire blanket. He didn't speak when I told him we were moving, just nodded, stood, and grabbed the tool case. His limp had improved slightly since the day before, but he still couldn't put full weight on the left foot. I gave him the lightweight Pelican case with the spare batteries and SDR. I carried the main rig, backpack frame mount, and antenna spool. We moved in silence. No vehicle. It was less than 2 miles, but all uphill, a decommissioned water tower site near the tree line. Used to serve a residential loop that went dry after the 2008 closure of a poultry plant. The tower was gone, but the concrete pad remained, and it had elevation with tree cover. More important, no overhead lines, no recent development, and clear lines of sight in 3 directions. We reached the site in 45 minutes. I worked fast. I lashed the end-fed long wire to the frame of the old tower ladder and ran it down into a vertical branch where I could orient it just under the canopy. No metal tower mast, just fiberglass and wood, low profile. I staked the tuner box behind a broken utility junction box, ran coax to the rig, and grounded the system with a copper rod I'd carried in the side pouch for weeks and never thought I'd need. Power came from the Life PO4 bank I'd pre-charged the night before. I checked the voltage, still over 90%, enough for 6 hours of intermittent transmission. I cut the carrier power to 10 watts, dropped the mic gain to near minimum, and set the transmitter to simulate skip characteristics. Narrowband, low frequency deviation, clipped tone. To anyone scanning, I'd sound like a reflection from 5 states away. I keyed the rig and opened with a 3-second dead carrier burst. No ID. Then, dead air. I repeated that pattern every 15 minutes, exactly on the quarter hour. That would let anyone who knew my pattern detect continuity without ever hearing voice. 20 minutes past the top of each hour, I'd open voice for no more than 60 seconds, in plain text, monotone. This is Calder. Station mobile, power limited. Net will maintain guidance relay at reduced capacity. Grid ops remain compromised. Movement discouraged. If you have evac movement, switch to short pulse, digital only, and listen at the top of each hour. No wideband use, no voice bursts, keep to 10 seconds, no more. Stacker's convoy checked in by relay just before 1 a.m. They're stalled near the county line, still en route to the drop for Maria's clinic. The saline and antibiotics they've been sitting on since yesterday. Problem is, a drone is hovering above the river bridge they need to cross. It's not active, no flares, no missile locks, but it's there, just hanging. That alone is enough to keep the trucks from moving. They've got no air defense. The drivers won't risk it. Stacker's voice came through quiet, frustrated, but not panicked. He said if the drone's visual systems were jammed long enough to break line of sight, he could make the crossing in under 90 seconds. But he had no jamming capability of his own, no emitters, no drones, no flares. He asked if I could help. The only tool I had was RF noise. I could broadcast a full-spectrum analog burst tuned to known visual guidance disruption bands. Old analog trick. It would create enough interference to confuse early-generation recon drones. The problem was that such a burst would paint me as a primary source. Any observer in the sky would get my signature and grid within seconds. I didn't answer right away. I needed to think. That's when thunder rolled in from the west. Soft at first, then building. A low-pressure front moving eastward, ahead of the main storm cell predicted for morning. I had 20 minutes, maybe less, before the first rain. I told Stacker I'd attempt coordinated masking. I would tie the burst to thunderclaps. He needed to be ready to move the second the window opened. I pre-programmed the rig to trigger 5-second bursts centered around the analog interference bands, spiking just above the typical drone optical range. The trick was timing. The thunder wasn't predictable, but the pressure wave gave me about a 1-second lead. I used a field mic to detect the pressure pulse and fed it into the SDR as a trigger. It wasn't perfect, but it would fire the burst within half a second of the sound reaching us. The signal hit the sky right on cue, and Stacker's trucks moved fast. I listened to his convoy confirm the crossing, one truck at a time. No lock-ons, no overhead sweep. The bridge held. For 10 minutes it looked like the gamble had worked. But I'd barely finished logging the burst data when the first arc broke the cloud line. A different signature than the surveillance drone. Brighter, faster, curving lower from the east. Not recon. This was kinetic, and it wasn't heading for the bridge. I yanked the coax from the back of the rig, cut power to the finals, and grabbed the go box. The entire site was designed for this. Pack and vanish in under 60 seconds. The teen, Owen, was already on his feet, hugging the spare battery box. I didn't say anything. I just pointed downslope toward the culvert we'd scouted 2 nights earlier, a narrow concrete storm drain running under the old quarry road. We moved without flashlights. I counted steps by memory, footfalls muffled by wet leaves. 10 seconds in, the glow behind us intensified. Another arc punched through the cloud deck, followed by a dry, sharp pop that didn't echo. That wasn't an explosion. It was an EMP strike or a microwave burst, designed to fry electronics, not people, but anything unshielded was now junk. We reached the culvert mouth and slid inside. I passed the antenna tuner to Owen and told him to crawl as far back as he could. I followed, dragging the radio bag with my left hand while shielding the open end with my right arm and shoulder. We weren't far enough in to avoid thermal effects, but the concrete would deflect most of the direct energy. Then the main strike hit. It didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like a freight train hitting a transformer substation at full speed. The ridge above us lit up briefly, then dimmed. Debris scattered through the trees, snapping branches. Dust rolled through the culvert mouth and coated everything in fine, gritty film. The pressure wave made my ears ring, but the structure held. We waited there for 10 minutes, breathing shallowly. I had no way of knowing whether the drone would circle back, or if this was a one-and-done mission. My radio was off. I had no feedback, just silence. Eventually, I powered on the handheld, the one stored inside the improvised Faraday tote. No signal at first. Then, faint but clear, a check-in from Stacker's lead vehicle. They had made the gravel pit south of the old mining site. Maria's clinic was now stocked, and the wounded were being treated. I reassembled the rig in the shelter of the culvert mouth, wrapping the long wire around a downed sapling and using Owen's knife to strip and reconnect the coax. Water had wickered inside during the scramble, so I had to cut and recrimp both PL2 59 ends by hand. I narrated the process in half whispers, knowing there might still be listeners, but hoping someone in the net was copying. Using field-grade crimp, lost my soldering torch in the last move. Shielding looks intact, We'll test SWR on low power burst. Confirm frequency integrity. When I finally keyed up again, I did it on a WhisperNet. Hand-keyed Morse only. No voice. No carrier ID. I tapped out 3 letters. CAL. Then a relay burst for Angel 2, Hannah Cole's call sign. She came back a minute later. Convoy secure. Pit held. Fireflies active north. Stay dark. I switched to narrowband text burst mode and began guiding 2 scattered vehicles. Not military, not net regulars, toward the same fallback zone. They hadn't used call signs before. Probably refugees from one of the towns east of the county seat. While tracking their positions via bounced pings off mobile towers still somehow operating in reduced mode, I caught an unexpected signal. Toby's call sign. Short, ragged, no prefix, no preamble. Finale 6 o'clock AM, same sky. That was all. Then silence. Toby hadn't checked in since the blackout 4 days ago. I didn't know if he was alive, captured, or on the run. His message, if it was real, pointed to something planned or unfolding at dawn. Finale. That wasn't an accident. The phrasing was deliberate. I copied the signal envelope, saved it as raw wave, and filed it into the outbound queue for Asta to intercept if she was still listening. Now I had to make a call. Earlier in the morning, one of the shortwave scans returned chatter about a town west of us. Benville, maybe 10,000 people at best. Civilian, no bases, no strategic value. But the signal I decoded was a soft marker, something used in pre-strike coordination to test latency and signal paths. In the past, I would have assumed it was just ping traffic, but now, with everything going on, I couldn't rule out a target designation. I didn't have confirmation, nothing hard, no launch message, no government alert. If I broadcast it, I'd risk mass panic, evac stampedes, even friendly fire between volunteers guarding their shelters. I weighed it anyway. 1 man, 1 transmitter, and a decision that could ripple through thousands of terrified people already hanging by threads. I sat there with the mic resting in my hand, the coke still damp from the rain, the smell of ozone and soil clinging to the walls of the culvert. The noise floor kept creeping up in my headphones, a low hiss that pulsed with faint modulation bursts from somewhere out in the static haze. Every few seconds the volume dipped, like someone somewhere was testing the frequency's heartbeat. Outside, the wind had picked up again. The storm front that had rolled through earlier was moving east, leaving behind clear, colorless air. The kind of air that comes right before something worse. I climbed out of the culvert and looked toward the horizon. The valley below was dim, no power anywhere, no headlights on the roads, no columns of smoke, just the hollow gray of a world running out of movement. Owen followed me out, carrying the smaller battery case slung across his chest with a strap. He didn't ask questions, just kept his eyes on the sky. He had learned by now that when I went quiet, it meant the airwaves were talking. He didn't need to say a thing. By late afternoon, the first wideband warning went out. It wasn't from any national relay or surviving network. It was from the remnants of maritime operators using an old HF emergency relay. The message was short. Multiple detonations confirmed. Midwest corridors. Eastern strike indicators. Coastal losses mounting. Then, static. Half an hour later, I caught a filtered intercept from what sounded like a European emergency service still online. They said negotiations in Switzerland had failed. Not cancelled. Failed. One capital denied involvement entirely. Another accused the first of faking ceasefire talks to mask troop movement. At the end of the message, the operator read coordinates. Not attack coordinates, just the grid points of communication blackouts spreading across Europe. Each one was gone. By dusk, I had the rig back upper, mounted behind a rock outcropping above the drainage line. I grounded it with rebar driven into wet soil and ran the antenna wire low, parallel to the slope, where it would blend with branches. I kept the output to 8 watts, feeding through a balanced tuner to reduce my signal footprint. I keyed the mic once, no voice. just a narrow carrier pulse to confirm modulation. This is Calder. Relay control. ArcNet remains live. Grid unstable. Convoy secure. Station mobile. Keep transmissions short. Repeat. Short and clean. If you're listening on GMRS, channel rotation continues every 20 minutes. For anyone near the county seat, move west and do not re-enter the valley. Confirm your location by light signal only. Do not transmit from open ground. As I spoke, the headset began picking up a secondary interference layer. At first it sounded like wind distortion, but then I noticed the modulation pattern was wrong. Not random, repeating, broadband jamming. Someone had started blanketing the region with overlapping noise to silence civilian channels. It wasn't targeted at me alone. I could see the waterfall fill from bottom to top with thick, rising interference, like an ocean overtaking the shore. I cut transmission power, adjusted the filter, and listened. No voice, just a series of oscillating tones sweeping across the band. I dropped frequency by 2 MHz, then again by 1. The noise followed. Whoever was controlling the jamming was using an adaptive algorithm. They were hunting signals dynamically, not manually. I killed power completely for a few minutes and let the rig cool. My finals were cooking again, and the smell of burnt dust was starting to fill the small shelter. I took the cover off, let the air move through it, and used a small folding fan powered off the auxiliary battery to draw the heat out. The fan made a soft, rhythmic clicking sound. I stared at it longer than I should have, just watching something mechanical still working, something predictable. The silence between bursts was the hardest part. When you spend days surrounded by nothing but signals, even a moment without one feels unnatural. I could hear my own breathing in the headset, the low hum of batteries, the faint drip of water collecting from the hillside and trickling down the concrete, all the little details of a life waiting for its last signal. Then I heard it, faint at first, barely there, the low, constant rumble of distant engines. Not trucks, not generators. This was higher, layered, jet wash echoing off hills. I stepped outside the culvert and looked east. The sky was pale orange, washed out by dust, and in that glow I saw them, several bright streaks descending through thin cloud cover. Not flares, not meteors, controlled descent vectors. The upper atmosphere shimmered briefly, and then the sound reached me, a hollow, rolling boom that moved like a wall of pressure. I knew what it was before the second one came. They weren't precision strikes, they were saturation detonations. The first one hit beyond the horizon, somewhere near the remains of the county seat. The flash was white, sharp, and too quick to process. I ducked behind the ridge, covering my head out of instinct even though the blast wave hadn't reached yet. 10 seconds later, it did. Not enough to knock me down, but enough to feel like the world had shifted half an inch sideways. Owen shouted something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. The shockwave carried dirt and bits of leaves through the air like a fog. The flash left a ghost image burned into my vision. The outline of the hill, the black skeleton of trees, and one column of cloud rising where the town used to be. A mushroom cloud was climbing, slow but steady, folding into itself as it reached altitude. I couldn't tell how far it was. Maybe 20 miles, maybe 50. The scale of it made distance meaningless. All I knew was that nothing in that direction was alive anymore. The radio on my lap snapped back to life. Static filled the line. Asta's identifier flashed once. No message, no words, just an automated ping that cut off mid-transmission. Then, the entire waterfall display flattened. No peaks. No noise, just silence. I reached for the microphone and tried to key up. Nothing. The rig was dead. I reset the fuse, switched to backup power, and tried again. The carrier light flickered once, then faded. Everything went black. For a few seconds, there was no sound except the wind pushing through the valley. Then a faint rushing noise began to build in the headset. Not interference, not feedback. Just raw, rising static, like the sound of a dying system feeding on its own remnants. I turned the tuning dial by instinct, hoping for any trace of human voice. But every band sounded the same. White noise. I remember thinking that maybe the world had gone quiet, not because everyone had died, but because there was finally nothing left to say. The wind picked up again, and with it came a distant crack, the sound of something large breaking apart high above the clouds. A streak of light tore across the horizon, falling slow and deliberate. A second rocket, failing re-entry. It broke apart before impact, scattering bright fragments across the fading sky. I watched it until the glow faded, then I leaned back against the cold rock, headset still on, even though the power was gone. The battery lights had gone dark, but I could still hear a faint hum in the wiring, the kind that might just be in your head after a long time listening to machines. And then, just before the last volt drained, I heard the automated voice. Monotone, mechanical, stripped of all inflection. Connection lost. Please wait for reconnection. The line repeated once. Then everything, light, sound, wind, stopped. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the stories alive. For now, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and stay alive. Jack's Nightmares, signing off. Until next time, survivor.